This is Marianne Martindale from the Alliance for a Better Utah, and welcome to the Better Utah Beat. In Connecticut this past Friday, 20 children and 6 adults were shot and killed by a 20-year-old before the shooter finally turned the gun on himself. In the moments just after the massacre, accurate news accounts were difficult to come by, but almost as pressing as what was happening was a parallel discussion about how we are allowed to talk about what was happening. One way of talking about the shooting was to argue that the Connecticut shooting is one more element in the ongoing saga of the effect of guns in our society, and that the only fitting response to the shooting is to enact gun laws that would prevent this from happening again. This way of talking about the Connecticut shooting has been roundly condemned as politicizing the tragedy. The second way of talking about the shooting was to refer to it as a national tragedy, and as tragedy, the only fitting discussion of the events can be to honor the victims through political silence. This approach acknowledges real people are hurting through silent solidarity and says that we should not politicize the Connecticut tragedy. But as Ezra Klein of the Washington Post noted, this, too, is a way of politicizing. He notes that discussions to not politicize the story function as code for dismissing discussions about gun control reform. We agree with Klein. What happened in Connecticut was beyond tragic, but by labeling it uniquely tragic, we ignore our agency as humans to make sure that this never happens again. That's why we argue for a two-pronged approach to addressing gun violence in America. This approach acknowledges that any resolution to gun violence must look at the problem as occurring on two levels, at the level of society at large and at the level of the individual. It acknowledges that mentally ill people shoot other people, but it also recognizes that societal structures create the condition oftentimes in which these people are made and through which they have access to guns. The two-pronged approach looks at the shooting in Connecticut not as an isolated incident, but as occurring in a complex web of causes and effects. The shooting is the individual effect of a societal cause. The shooting is not the problem, rather the shooting is the symptom of a greater problem. We must talk about guns. We must also talk about mental illness and the root causes of this type of violence. There is an anger that permeates our policy discussions, our classroom discussions, and our water cooler discussions. We suggest that much of this anger is a result of structural injustice. Gun violence is the symptom of a deeper anger, one spurred by prejudice and class injustices. And though no amount of gun regulation will change that, until we realize that we are all equal, gun regulation will need to occur. The increased occurrence of these shootings, 5 of the 11 deadliest shootings in the U.S. have happened in the last 5 years, prevents us from any longer using the phrase lone gunman. We can no longer allow ourselves to see these occurrences as isolated incidences bearing no relation to each other. There are no more lone gunmen. It's time then for Americans to come out of the closet as supporters of gun control. It is time to reclaim this phrase, we are for control. Control of the government by its citizens and not by the powerful gun lobby. Control of the environments in which we work and live and play. And control of our rights as citizens to make collective decisions about the welfare of our society. The killing of innocent children and teachers in Connecticut is beyond our ability to fully grasp. The very fact that the term school shooting is now part of our vernacular is horrifying. But acknowledging the tragedy of violence does not mean we are powerless to do anything about it. While holding candlelight vigils is a thoughtful and important way of honoring the dead, truly discussing the hard and often political issues surrounding such a tragedy is the only way of redeeming them. Until next week, this is Marianne Martindale with the Alliance for a Better Utah with this week's edition of the Better Utah Beat. Whether you celebrate Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Festivus, Christmas, the winter solstice, or just the fact that you get a couple of days off, we wish you and your families a safe and peaceful holiday season. For more information, visit betterutah.org.